This week's test drive, you could say, could almost fit in the palm of my hands. A scaled down approach in the automotive world, and one I've been behind the wheel several times. And each test drive, it seems to grow on me just a little bit more. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Now behind me is the 2021 Buick Encore GX Essence Edition. And this week proved once again that scaled down approach fits quite nicely, even for this tall, lanky frame. Now, like I mentioned, this vehicle has grown on me over the last several test drives, and it also has grown within the family lineup, this being the GX, making it just a couple inches bigger than the standard Encore and fitting squarely between it and this slightly bigger Envision. This vehicle growing both in wheelbase and in overall length. But where this vehicle has truly grown on me is, well, in the urban jungle. Being able to get into those tight spots in the parking garages, parallel parking along the main streets, makes any novice, well, feel like an expert. Where this vehicle can also shine is certainly when you equip it with the all-wheel drive. You can go off the beaten path, but kind of with its regal appeal, I tend to stick with the paved roads. So how does this vehicle measure up? Well, overall about 171 inches long, and just for comparison, mid-size SUVs typically start around about 185, so this vehicle falling short by about 14 inches just for comparison's sake. As for width, around about 71 inches wide and 64 inches tall, wheelbase about 102 inches. Also, you're going to have a slightly wider track there at the rear end, kind of give you a nice flared out look there at the back. And lastly is ground clearance. And one thing I like about this SUV is it does have that sedan, small vehicle-like feel, drives like a car, but has that kind of SUV prowess when it comes to ground clearance, this being just slightly over 7 inches. Now this vehicle comes in front wheel drive, but it also has all-wheel drive as an option, giving that grip at the four corners and reassurance you can handle any slippery situations. As for the tires, you're seeing 225/55 wrapping an 18-inch wheel. This vehicle also coming with a spare tire option, this particular model having a 16-inch version, obviously kind of that donut-like look. Interestingly, we actually had to utilize it. We went out for a day trip, ended up possibly picking up some road harshness, which kind of gouged the back left tire. We didn't know anything about it until we got to our destination. We came back out. Best of all, though, is the tire monitoring system immediately alerted us that the back left tire was low. We kind of thought maybe like a nail. We actually hear an audible hissing of air leaving the tire. Got back in the vehicle and the tire pressure had already dropped 2 pounds, so we eventually just stopped there in the parking lot, changed the tire. Unfortunately, it is kind of that smaller one. I would look to see if you can opt to get the actual matching tire of the size of the vehicle. The smaller ones, I just don't like their durability for maybe a long trip of having to leave where you are to get back home, but it did actually do great, serve the purpose. We got the tire repaired and got back on our way. But the best thing of all is having that spare, while some vehicles just aren't delivering that. Swinging around to the business end of things, typically it's all about the cargo space, but this week it was more about the access to that spare tire, because without it, we would have been stranded, and thankfully Buick delivers it here on the Encore, and even better is it's so simple and easy to get to. Now, before we get to that, let's talk about some design features and safety back here. First off, this being the Essence, a little bit more premium quality. That means you're going to have a power rear hatch, 3 different ways to get access on the key fob, there at the electronic release, or the good old motion activated hands-free. What I like here on the Encore is it does give you a nice emblem that lights up, shines there on the ground, allowing you to kind of know where to swing the leg, because as you know, I typically cannot find that, but with that illumination makes it so much simpler. But simply on the key fob, it is just a double tap and it does rise to the occasion. Now again, with that typical ground clearance you're going to find on this vehicle, around about 7 inches. That means for my 6'2" frame, well, it's not a head banging affair, really getting this rear hatch up out of the way. Obviously the electronic button here to get it to power back down. Now what you're going to find is tons of space, around about 23 cubic feet as it sits with the second row up. As you lay that flat, it's going to be around about 50 cubic feet. But again, it's what lies beneath here that was crucial. At first glance, I thought the tires may be run flats, which typically means you're not going to find a spare tire back here, but instead a fix-a-flat system. That wouldn't have worked in this case because the gouge in the tire was just too large. It wouldn't have been able to have been fixed, and we would have been stranded there in the parking lot. But thankfully, when I lifted this rear covering, Well, I saw a spare tire. Now again, this being a 16-inch version comparative to the 18-inch on the car, but we've all been here, we've all used this type of system. Gives you plenty of mileage to get to a solution of changing the tire. Definitely not a permanent option, but thankfully there when I needed it. Now what's great about this spare tire is exactly where I needed it, right here in the vehicle, real easy to access. This isn't always the case. Sometimes they're mounted underneath the vehicle. That means you're gonna have to use that kind of cranking system. Just a couple extra steps. In this case, so much simpler. All you have is this simple release here. Just crank it out. That's gonna release. You just simply lift it out of the vehicle. Right underneath there is the car jack and of course all the different tools you're gonna need to release the tire that is flat. Real nice and simple and right where you need it. Now what you're also going to see with this nice flooring is it has different levels, this one being in the highest level, but you can take it and slide it just a hair forward. It'll release and then slide it back. That's going to drop down just a little bit more, give you a little bit more height. That's going to be helpful if you have taller items. And you also have this nice rigid tonneau cover. That's going to be perfect for hiding anything you put in here, especially packages or what have you. Just gives you that extra level of security, but you can release this if you have something a little bit taller and it'll handle it just fine. Besides the spare tire, the next big feature and the big talking point to me is what it does well with ingress, and something I've complained about, everything from premium vehicles on down to compact options, but thankfully no complaints here on the Encore. And what I'm referring to is just easeability. It all starts here at the door, and we all know the smart key systems, the ability pretty much to leave this in your pocket and forget about it. And where the Achilles heel is for most vehicles, it's certainly ease of ingress here at the front, but the second row typically falls short, but thankfully not the case here. You have access buttons at the front and also here at the back side, something I've argued about across the industry and across several manufacturers, but thankfully Buick does it quite well. Ease of access at every entry point. Under the hood, you either have a 1.2 liter turbocharged inline 3-cylinder or the as-tested 1.3 liter turbocharged inline 3. Now, either way, you have decent horsepower, but the base is going to be around about 137 horses and 162 foot-pounds of torque. If you want a little bit more pep in your step, that's going to be the as-tested 1.3. That's going to deliver around about 155 horses and 174 foot-pounds of torque. My argument is just get rid of the 1.2. The 1.3 fits just squarely on this vehicle, does quite well with the pep in its step, and with the modest horsepower differences, you might as well get a best bang for your buck at 155 horses, should be the minimum on this vehicle. When it comes to legroom numbers, you're going to have plentiful space up front, around about 40 inches. The second row, not too shabby, around about 36. And if you know my breaking point, that typically is anything below 35. So seeing great legroom numbers means any size individual is going to find great comfort. As for overall layout, you're going to find a standard bench styling here at the back, a little bit of raised there in the center, but best of all with the ground clearance, there's going to be no argument for feet space because it's just a nice flat floor, meaning 3 adults can fit back here with ease. One thing I like over at General Motors is really their MyLink system, and from day one it was perfect, and they've only made it better over the last several years, and it truly is an infotainment system, not just meant for entertainment, but all the other functions on the vehicle. Some manufacturers are falling short and not integrating the infotainment with all the other controls. Now, first off, real nice and colorful, large, right exactly where you need it, but what you'll find is it integrates everything, even right down to the climate. First off, nice simple controls, dual zones up front, fan speed. I'm not a big fan of the little buttons, prefer another knob here in the middle, but again, everything nice and easy to use. But what I do like is as you interact with this, it pops up on the screen, and if you need to go full screen, just simply click it and you have all the functionality there at a glance, and that's much better for the driver to barely look down here versus way down there. Some manufacturers just falling short here, not giving you this ease of integration, so kudos to General Motors with their MyLink system. Low on the dash, you're going to find tons of connectivity from USB-Cs, USB, auxiliary jack, typical car outlet, and nice wireless charging. That pretty much means you can take your so-equipped phone or device, lay it down there. It's going to charge up with ease, and it's out of sight, out of mind. And again, with all the typical CarPlay interaction, again, it interacts with the infotainment system. So eyes off your phone and eyes on the road. Now, I mentioned earlier about the battle in the urban jungle, and this vehicle does quite well. And for the novice, when it comes to maybe parallel parking on the city streets, well, this button right here, we've all heard about it, makes life so much simpler. Once you press it, you're going to get the display here on the infotainment area, really checking to see what you want to do. In this case, parallel parking, or you can go perpendicular, like in a typical parking spot. This vehicle is going to kind of maneuver you through there. You got to keep your hands ready and monitor what's going on. But best of all is it's real easy to use and makes, again, fighting the urban jungle so much easier. Other functions down below, one I do like is the auto stop, auto start feature. The engine does kind of do the turn off, turn on when it's at idle, but I do like the fact that I can turn that off if I don't care for it. Obviously, lane awareness and other controls you can turn on and off. Now, just for this edition, we're awarding a test drive behind the wheel of the 2021 Buick Encore GX, the slightly bigger version to the standard Encore. Now, what we like this week is it is the urban fighter, basically be able to get into the trenches and go anywhere and maneuver with ease. But best of all, it has that reassurance there at the back end. No, not the backup camera, no, not the surround view, no, not the backup sensors, but specifically that spare tire. And this week, that was crucial, and having that extra tool in your, well, pocket really was helpful, because, well, not being able to get from point A to B is just plain aggravating. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.